Dolphins and Panthers, week 6 in the National Football League, and it's time to look into that crystal ball. That's what we love to do here on Dolphins Today. Let's get it started right away. Predict the score. Do it now in the comments. It's score prediction time. Dolphins versus Panthers. Let me know who you got and what the score will be. Let's get it going, fired up once again this week because the Dolphins are heavy favorites. They've got the advantage on paper, but they got to go out and execute. How many times do we say that? It's about doing what you know you can do, and the Dolphins are, check that out, 13-point favorites, 13.5-point favorites against the Carolina Panthers in Week 6 at home at Hard Rock Stadium. The over-under slated at 48.5. It could be another case where maybe the Dolphins get those 48.5 points themselves. But 1 o'clock kick at home, Hard Rock Stadium. I wonder if the Dolphins will go all white at home once again. They've done it in their first 2 home games, and I personally love the all white. So we'll see what they rock on Sunday. But you got to join us on Sunday because we have a ton of fun. Live watch parties. We bring you play-by-play analysis. We do all kinds of wild stuff. We put Dolphin suits on. We dunk our heads in Chase Claypools. We get after it. It's a ton of fun. You don't want to miss it. So join us for our Sunday live watch party. Dolphins community, Dolphins Today. It's where you want to be. And then every Wednesday, 5 o'clock, we do live shows. And it's a lot of fun, just like we're live right now. You don't want to miss that either. You don't want to miss anything. That's why you subscribe. Now, our Dolphins versus Panthers preview. I'm going to start by saying a warning to the Miami Dolphins, and I'm guilty of it. Listen, hand up. I've been bad about this. I've been bad about this all week. I feel very confident, maybe a little too confident. Like Tua said after the loss to the Bills, I need to be humbled a little bit. So, I'm telling this to myself as much as I'm telling it to the Dolphins. Don't look past the Panthers. Yes, they're struggling. They're 0-5. They don't have a lot going for them. But they're a team in the NFL. It's any given Sunday. That's cliche, but it's important to note. So let's take a look at that Panthers team, get to know them a little bit more. I mentioned the 0-5 record, but how about the excitement of Bryce Young, first overall pick in last year's draft? And it hasn't really worked out yet, but again, 5-game sample size. Mike McDaniel said this guy's going to be a stud. He's a baller. His future is really bright in the National Football League, and that's high praise from the Dolphins head coach to Bryce Young. Frank Reich is in his first season as head coach, so still figuring some things out, and the Dolphins need to make sure they don't figure those things out against them. They do have some weapons. Adam Thielen, I got a feeling. How about Adam Thielen? D2 legend out of Minnesota State Mankato. He is their top weapon, and he's actually put up some pretty impressive numbers. Of course, he had quite the career for the Minnesota Vikings, and he's just kind of continued it in Carolina. So 394 yards receiving. That's 11th amongst the NFL wide receivers, so not bad, especially when you consider there hasn't been a lot of production on offense. 3 receiving touchdowns, which is tied for 3rd amongst NFL wideouts, so also pretty impressive there. And let's also keep in mind that Stephon Diggs had his way with the Dolphins secondary in Week 4. We don't want a repeat of that. Adam Thielen is a guy you circle on the defensive game plan. He's who you need to stop. And I believe it's another opportunity for the Dolphins defense to prove that they can play. They did it against the Giants. They had 8 sacks, which was really impressive because they didn't have that many coming up to that point. They had 7 sacks, which was a really impressive day for the Dolphins defensive line. So I want to see the defense get after the Carolina Panthers. What else are we watching for? Listen, I can give you the keys to victory and everything else, and the Dolphins got to do this, but in a game like this, I want to give you some specifics to have your eyes open for on Sunday. First and foremost, that turnover battle. The Dolphins, I've said it once, I'll say it again, kind of been a statistical anomaly when it comes to the turnover battle because they've lost it a couple of times and still won the game. That just doesn't happen very often in the NFL. The Dolphins have turned the ball over 8 times. It pains me to say that, whereas they've only forced 5 turnovers. So math is not my specialty, but even I know that's a -3 turnover differential because they've turned the ball over 8 times and only forced 5. The Panthers haven't been much better. They're -4 in the turnover comparison for the 5-game sample size. Both of those numbers are not great, but what's more telling, the Panthers are 0-5. The Dolphins are 4-1, despite their lackluster performance in the turnover battle. So let's keep our eye on that and see if the Dolphins can play a clean and polished game without turning the ball over. Now, what else do I have my eye on? How about the potential debut of Chase Claypool? That's right. He was in uniform in practice on Wednesday for the Dolphins. No official word if he'll play yet, but check out what Joe Shad, one of the Dolphins beat writers, said about it in regards to Mike McDaniel's comments about Chase Claypool, saying he's readying soon as Sunday, but all players have to earn the right to play. So it's hard for McDaniel to say how much time Chase will need because he's been in a similar offense for 17 years. But Mike McDaniel said Chase is attentive and he is a wide receiver with size. So we've said it leading up to today's show and prior to when all the way back to when the Dolphins acquired Chase Claypool. He's an exciting player. Check this one out from Barry Jackson, another beat writer for the Dolphins, asked about the possibility of 6'4" Claypool playing tight end because that could be an option. It could be a way that Mike McDaniel utilizes Chase Claypool, and the answer to that question was, I don't want to limit a player to what he can or can't do. I can tell he's definitely attentive. He's paying attention to everything. So that tells me he's trending in the right direction. And maybe against an inferior opponent, that's the time to run him out there and do a little experimenting. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments. Do you think we see Chase Claypool this Sunday? Type Y for yes or N for no. I think we do because he's learned the offense fast enough, and maybe not right away, but full disclosure, I see this game being kind of a lopsided win for the Dolphins. And I know I'm not necessarily heeding my advice of not overthinking this one or being overconfident, but let's say the Dolphins get out to a couple touchdown lead. Maybe that's the time you work Chase Claypool in and see what he has. Now, that said, of course, we also understand that if he's not ready, he's not ready. But I'm optimistic. I think we see Chase Claypool. You know what else I'm optimistic about? My picks are going to land once again, as they so often do. I'm not bragging. I'm just telling you how it is. PrizePicks is a proud presenting sponsor of today's Dolphins Today edition, and we're so happy to have them on board. I'm personally happy because sounds maybe a little bit selfish, but I'm kind of all in on PrizePicks because I love playing. It's the best way to play daily fantasy sports, and it's really simple too. So you can forget those Excel spreadsheets where you try to have all of the reasons of why you're making a picks. It's really simple with PrizePicks. It's you versus the projected stats. So you simply pick more or less on a player's projected stat, and you go from there. So, for example, this weekend, I'm always picking some Dolphins PrizePicks. I've got Tua Tagovailoa with more passing yards than his projected 294.5. And this is a tall ask from Tyreek Hill, but I've also got more on his projected stat line as well. 91.5 yards receiving. I'm picking him to have more. And defensively, look, we gassed him up at the beginning of the show. He's really good, but I think the Dolphins defense steps up and limits Adam Thielen to less than his projected 68.5 passing yards. So that's how it works. It's really easy. It's a lot of fun. So don't waste any more time. Go ahead and make an account at prizepicks.com/CLNS. And it's really easy. For being a Dolphins fan, we're giving you a first deposit match up to $100. And we're going to go ahead and make it easy on you and put that link in the comments and the description of this video. But one more time, it's prizepicks.com/CLNS, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Now, on the other side, I think anytime a first overall pick in the previous draft is playing, it's worth noting. So it hasn't gotten off to a rip-roaring start for Bryce Young yet, but I think he's a special talent. And Mike McDaniel said as much. He said his future is so bright in this league. He's a baller. And that's how Mike McDaniel talks, so you got to love it there. But keep your eye on Bryce Young. Make some plays. He was obviously drafted number 1 overall for a reason. And a little Alabama connection there between Bryce Young and Tua Tagovailoa. Obviously, they're never at Bama together, but they share the same alma mater. So Bryce Young, have your eye on him. And here's the exact quote from Mike McDaniel that I alluded to earlier. He's a baller with a bright future. He sees defenders, uncanny vision, timing, and rhythm. He's going to be a very good player in this league. So, as I said earlier, let's not let his coming out party be against the Dolphins, but still, keep your eye on the young gunslinger in his rookie year. Not off to the best start. His stats, 63.9%, 750 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. Let's see if the Dolphins defense can make it tough on him. And then after this Week 6 game against the Dolphins, then we can wish him all the best. But not on Sunday, right? Not on Sunday. Lastly, who's going to step up for that Miami defense? Last Sunday, I think collectively, it was the best effort we've seen from the Dolphins. And I want to shout out a couple of guys on the defensive line because if you recall, we challenged that defensive line. We said we got to get some more pressure on the opposing quarterbacks. Zach Sieler did exactly that. Christian Wilkins was influential. And Andrew Van Ginkel, he also played really well. In general, this Dolphins defense took a major step forward against the Giants in that game. 7 sacks, 10 total in the previous 4 games. So they nearly matched their season output of sacks. They're now tied for the 3rd most amongst NFL teams in sacks. They did not allow a Giants touchdown, which was really impressive. Offensive touchdown. Of course, they had that pick 6. But like I said, Zach Sieler was special, led the way with 2 sacks. And we're continuing to see the emergence of Andrew Van Ginkel. He's been a bright spot for this Dolphins defense. And kind of a fun story, if you recall back to the offseason, he signed a 1-year deal with the Dolphins. He even took a free agent visit with the Patriots. But you know who convinced them to be a Miami Dolphins? Vic Fangio, the new defensive coordinator, called him personally, said, I want you to play for the Miami Dolphins. Andrew Van Ginkel was all about it. And you combine that with the injury of Jalen Phillips, he's seen his role increase, and he's been really good. Played at Wisconsin. Take a look at those stats. 4 sacks, 6 tackles for loss in this season. He's been a bright spot of the defense. I want to see him continue to climb and continue to establish himself as a force on the defense. So what I'm looking for on Sunday, can the Dolphins win the turnover battle? It's a little thing, but it's crucial. It's a huge thing. Chase Claypool, maybe we see him. Mike McDaniel's excited to get him going in the offense and utilize him. He's a 6'4" wide receiver with speed. I think that plays well with the Dolphins offense. And look, Bryce Young's a special talent. Mike McDaniel said as much. I'm curious to see how the rookie plays against, hopefully, a lethal Dolphins pass rush. So who's it going to be? Who's stepping up for the Dolphins on defense? Zach Sieler, Christian Wilkins, and Andrew Van Ginkel were the 3 that come to mind for their performance against the Giants. But I'm curious to see who's going to step up on the defensive side for the Dolphins. So win the turnover battle. Let's see if Chase Claypool gets some tick. Bryce Young, first overall pick at quarterback for the Panthers, and who steps up on the defense. And we'll wrap it up with this. Let me know in the comments. Let's get a little creative here. Fill in the blank The Dolphins win on Sunday if they do this. It can be a cliche football answer. It can be a little out of the box thinking. It can be maybe they don't do this. Maybe they don't. They don't turn the ball over and they'll win. But I'm going to keep it real simple and say the Dolphins win if they execute. Just go out and do what you're capable of doing. Not a lot to ask. Just simple. Keeping it simple, stupid. KISS. Execute on offense. Execute on defense. You've got the playmakers to do it. You're the better team. You're at home. Let's keep this momentum going. Looking forward to Sunday. So join us for our watch party. That's why you subscribe. It's a highlight every Sunday. We get wild. We get crazy. Just like on today's live show, you never know what can happen on Dolphins Today. It's always a lot of fun. Shout out to you guys making this the best Dolphins YouTube community on the planet Earth. International. We're all over the place. Love you guys, and it's going to be a lot of fun on Sunday.